Hey, welcome to Vortex Garage, and on today's episode we're going to get this 1965 Mercury Park Lane up and running. And well, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge because the gas tank fell out. Well, let's see what we can do. So this, again, 1965 Mercury Park Lane. This car has sat for many years, and our goal today is to get it running even though the gas tank fell out. So we do have some metal work to do, which you've seen from the other video. We have the floor pans for the back seat pans and the trunk pan that have to do. Basically, there's a little cover over the back window now. That back window, I'm pretty sure, has been leaking water for years. Water's pooling up in the trunk and underneath the rear seat, and it actually rotted out from the inside. So why do I want to get it moving rather than work on the metal repair first? Well, in this particular case, I know this car ran when it was parked. I know that's the classic Craigslist thing, ran when parked, but this one literally did. So it shouldn't take a lot to get it going. I don't even think we have to go as crazy as we did on the Spitfire video, where we really kind of dug into it and took things apart. This car has been in the family. I've actually worked on it a little bit before, many years ago. So I do know it should be in pretty decent health, but I'm still going to do some checks because this is a motor I like. I don't want to ruin it. So we're going to take some precautions. We're going to put some fresh oil in it, make sure that it's free. But then it's going to be a matter of making sure we have what we need. We've got spark, compression, fuel. We should be good. So we're going to check all those things out, make sure that the motor is healthy, and before we fire it up, and hopefully we can get it to fire up. So we are going to have to use the auxiliary fuel tank. We'll probably use the same 12-volt pump that we used on the Spitfire, mainly because the gas tank fell out on the way over here. And on the tow truck, of course, but that makes sense because we're not running it. So, but I guess the big question is where are we starting? Well, since we're working outside, I actually got this new tool cart from Harbor Freight. I know a lot of people aren't huge Harbor Freight people, but I actually am. Harbor Freight allows me to buy some stuff that I probably wouldn't be able to afford otherwise, and expand my tool repertoire, I guess you could call it. And this little cart, you get this thing on sale under $100, and I'm really impressed and happy with it. And the thing that I like about it, I loaded this up with tools from inside the garage and was able to wheel it all out here. So I'm minimizing all the time walking back and forth, which you usually do when you're working outside in your driveway and you've got your tool chest in the garage in storage. So this is nice. It's a neat little way to bring things out. I've got some jack stands on the bottom. You could bring your parts out on it. It'll hold, like 500 pounds. So it's a nice little setup. So I was able to fill it up with some basic tools that we might need. Probably didn't get everything, but got at least enough to start. So let's get things started. Let's pop the hood on this thing, and then what we're going to do, we're going to see how we do the cameras today, and try to give you some good views and try to minimize, how many times I got to edit out my underwear showing. So, all right. On that note, let me try to stand this way maybe. No, I got a camera here, so that might work. All right, this hood thing sucks to open. Come on. All right, you can't be doing that. You can't be blowing the lens cover across the camera. I hope some of you all are real videographers and look at what I do and chuckle. But I think one thing that we want to do on this car eventually is actually adjust the bumper, because the hood pull, you can't get your finger past the bumper. So what I end up doing, I just use a big screwdriver and kind of go on either end like that. There we go. And that gets it to pop up. But even without gloves, my finger actually hits the bumper and I can't seem to pull the hood release lever past the bumper. So I think the bumper's not adjusted right. All right, another thing that I do that's really bad is, and I did spray some WD-40 on it. It looks like it almost popped this time, but not quite. So I take a rag, put it around there so I can pretend not to scratch the paint. And then I'm gonna have to pry up just a tad like that. So cool. Hey, aren't ratty muscle cars and stuff like that all the rage? Well, if your car's not ratty enough, just open the hood with a screwdriver. You'll put scratches all along this edge and look totally legit. All right, come on now. There we go. It's nice having the hood hinge springs. This hood and the clamshell hood of the Spitfire with its mechanical attachment, you never have any problems with those like hydraulic or gas-filled struts that fail, and then you're propping it up. All right, so we'll adjust the cameras a little bit. We'll start tearing into this thing. Let's get it running. Now you might be able to see my head. You probably don't want to see my head though. You want to see this. This is a 390 FE motor, and the orange painted stuff is actually correct. This is a Marauder edition Park Lane. Marauder was essentially a trim line back in the 60s. I think they put it on the Monterey, the Montclair, and the Park Lane in this era. The 65, excuse the cold. The 65, one thing you'll find, there's a lot of single year parts, and you did find this a lot back then, especially with some of the higher end makes. They did a lot of single year cars. I don't think Mercury was as bad as Lincoln. Lincoln really did a lot of 1 year cars where they would totally change out the tooling, sheet metal, everything, and then just make it real difficult to get parts. So the 65 though does have some single year parts, one of which just so happens to be that rusty old gas tank that fell out. So we're probably going to put in a later gas tank, which actually is going to sit about 2 or 3 inches lower, but I don't think that's a problem. I don't think it'll sit lower than the rear axle. So we'll probably have to fabricate some tank straps and whatnot, but you know, we'll burn that bridge when we get there. Well, let's not burn it. It is a gas tank after all. Anyway, I think I tried to answer this earlier. Why am I even bothering trying to get this running when I have rust repair to do? Well, in this particular case, this thing is really heavy, and I'd like to move it. And I'd like to move it whenever I want. So if I can rig up a temporary fuel system on this, be able to slap that on, and when I really need to move this thing, turn the key and drive it, you know, to the other end of the driveway, that's wonderful. I'm not going to take it around town or nothing like that, but I want to be able to get that Mountaineer out because I got to finish the transmission on that, and this is blocking it. So, you know, I could pull it, I could move it around, but when I'm by myself, man, it would be nice to just throw some stuff in here, hop in, turn the key, and get it running. That way too, I'm going to feel a little better knowing that the motor still runs good and it's not seized up when I start doing all that metal repair. So, let's go ahead and remove our air cleaner. We cleaned all this out last time, so hopefully there are no new mouse nests. Nope, all right, that's good. So I'm just gonna keep this on, take the whole thing, put it here for now. I'll go put that in a safe place in a little bit. Now the nice thing, you can see we got a new cap and rotor, got new plugs. I think the points and condenser were done. Believe it or not, the brake booster is new. Sorry, it's outside, so there's going to be more wind in the microphones. Although the mice had some fun with the tag there. So in all reality, I think we're just going to be pulling off the carburetor, looking to see where we want to cut into the fuel line. Not cut into it, but basically bridge into it. And I'm going to want to pull that carb just so I can check everything on it. One thing I noticed from before, I don't think we have a return spring set up on this carb. So we're going to have to put one on before we start it up, otherwise we're going to peg it full throttle. Let's hope that our coil is good, and of course we'll put something on the front of the motor, just make sure that it spins, and I think we'll be good. So let's go ahead and start by pulling that carb off. Well, I'll tell you what, first things first, let's find the oil dipstick. Let's just see what we have in there. All right, pro tip, when you're smelling the oil, don't fall backwards and shove it up your nose like I just did. You know what? It smells like brand new oil. I'll bet you this thing had an oil change when it was put away. And yeah, it does not smell like gas. There's no water in it. It smells like fresh oil, so that's good. And I really apologize for the sniffling. I can't believe I got a cold. All right. So I'm still going to do an oil change on it because I want fresh oil in it. I've got the oil. We're going to put a new filter on. So let's knock that out. That's easy. You've seen all that. We'll pull the carb off. We'll pop it open, just make sure it's clean, everything's okay. And we'll go from there. See what I was saying? Look at how brand new that oil looks. But anyway, here's all the bad stuff. Now obviously this thing sat in grass at one time. It's very dirty. But let's see. I think you can kind of see. Just look to the right of that jack stand. You can kind of see it up there right before the real white from the outside of the car. That's actually a chewed up frame rail. Of course, you can see that strip right below my finger there. That's where my foot went through on the rear seat pan, so that's what we'll replace. And the gas tank wasn't too far behind that. Well, I guess it was a little bit further because I think it was behind the axle, but you know, exhaust is pretty decent on it. I'm sure there's worse out there, but oh great. This is the most fun thing when you're changing oil and the wind blows the stream. I hate it when the wind blows your stream. Anyway, flip this drain. We'll go ahead and put on a new Motorcraft filter. This thing's really just dirty and rusty more than anything. Hopefully we can get it off easy, but so that's what we're seeing under here. All right. I don't want to make this a 40-minute video of me talking underneath the car, so we'll do our oil change and join you back up top. All right, so the next step at this rate, I say we go ahead and pull the carburetor off. Obviously, we're going to want to check the ignition system out at some point. I can go ahead and pop that off right now. All right, and this is some good news. Our points actually look really nice. We might have to hit them up with some emery cloth, but all in all, they're not bad. This, again, nice new cap and rotor. And you can kind of see the points back there. And they really don't look too bad. So we might be good. They're actually, looks like they're closed right now. So, but anyway, we'll put that back on, we'll check it out. We'll probably clean the points before we start it, but hopefully we'll have spark. We're tinkering with the carb a little bit. Got our main fuel line coming loose. One thing to do when you kind of get these broken loose a little bit, so we did spray some PB Blaster on it, but the one concern obviously is the fitting into the carburetor body, which can be tight and corroded. But strangely enough, another thing you're going to find is the actual flare fitting and the hard line can corrode together. So I like to do is after I get them loose, kind of move them back and forth a little bit, try to get that worked up. Make sure you had got your PB Blaster not just on the threads going in, but also on the pipe itself to help free that up and lubricate it a little bit. So again, I keep debating whether or not I really want to pull this carb all the way off, but it's really not that hard to do. So I just keep telling myself, stop being lazy and pull the darn thing off. I'll return the favor of laziness somewhere else. So we'll do this step, but skip a few others. So it's a give and take kind of thing, right? All right, come on now. Come on, I'm on camera. You gotta work. There we go. All right, so that's loose. Oh yeah, we have our transmission kickdown appears to have fallen off at some point. So we will have to put that back on. It looks like the little C-clip that holds that on was missing. So that certainly makes it easy. And the only other issue I'm having, I have fairly fat, these Tecton flare wrenches are kind of big and bulky. And as a result, to get my 3/8 flare on the vacuum line for the Vacuum Advance, pretty much takes me right up to where the choke mounts. So I'd have to take the choke off to get it further with the flare wrench, but I think I got it loosened. So I'm going to try and see if I have another flare wrench with a 3/8 that's thinner, and unfortunately I can't flip it around, or I'm going to see if I've got a regular wrench that I can get on there and have that work as well. Now, of course, the wrench set I brought out only goes down the 1/2, so I don't know if you can see me on the camera, walking back into the shop yet again. So anyway, as I was walking back in the garage to get things, I was thinking about this nice tool cart that I had and how I loaded it up with what I thought would be just about every tool that I'd need for this job. And of course I needed to go back in at least 3 times so far. But it did still cut it down. And I thought, that's just Murphy's Law, right? You can bring as many tools as you want. It ain't gonna make a difference. You're not gonna bring every tool that you need. Then I thought, well, what if I bring out every tool that I have in a sense, and I've brought out every tool. Therefore, I shouldn't need to go back into the garage to get a tool because they're all out. And then that's when I realized I better shut my mouth, because that's when you're taking a trip to the tool store or the auto parts store, because A, you broke a tool, B, you don't have a tool, or C, you lost a tool, or D, something went horribly wrong and now you're in the car driving somewhere. Or you were hungry and you used an excuse of needing a tool, which you didn't really need, just so you could go to Roy Rogers. So that's a pro tip, by the way. You realize that you can actually get by with all the stuff that you have, but you make some stink that you need something at the parts store or whatnot. And really it's just a ploy to go out and get a burger. All right. I had to keep the friendly banter going while I turn this thing a quarter turn at a time, because again, the physical act of removing the choke and giving myself a full swing that would have this off in 10 seconds would take probably about 5 minutes. So instead I'll take 5 minutes working on this screw. The theory being, of course, is that while yes, I'm not saving any time by doing this, and perhaps taking a little bit longer, one could argue that I'm touching less things, therefore my chance for breaking something is smaller. Though as my frustration level increases as I work on this 1/4 at a time, that also raises the chances that I will slam something into this choke and break it nonetheless. So, I really can't give you too much advice about what's better. Take the choke off and have a full swing and have this thing off right away. Risk having something on the linkage jam up and not work. Or struggle to get this thing off for 5 minutes, get frustrated, and snap something. So it's up to you. It's really pick your poison kind of deal. Me, I like to live on the edge, and I apparently like monotony. There we go. All right, so we got that vacuum line disconnected. So now we got to do, I also had this line that went to that manifold, exhaust manifold disconnected. I very professionally disconnected this transmission linkage because A, it wasn't connected at all. So it was really awesome and worked really fast. Now I'm going to pop off the throttle connection. There we go. All right, so now it should just be the 4 bolts and lift the thing off. So we're about to find out. All right, what are we still attached to? Well, I see. We're attached to this thing, this heat riser thing that goes down into the manifold. But I'm just going to move it around the heater hose for now and finesse it on camera. Have to figure out where that goes later. There's our carburetor, which I'm not going to hang over the hole there because we've got all kinds of garbage falling off of it. So we're going to go and do a little bench work with this because I can already see there's some nuts and berries and mouse pieces and crap in there. So put that on our cart. All right, we got our carburetor here. We got that little hose pulled off that it was on the side you saw. And you can kind of see we've got some mouse remnants still on our secondaries. There's a little bit of, I should really wear gloves to pull that out, but it's just some fuzz. But most notably, there is some sunflower seeds. So this is one of the reasons we wanted to go ahead and pull this apart. We'll clean everything out with some carb cleaner and hopefully be good enough to go. So let's go ahead and pull off our top cover. Okay, now this carb actually was rebuilt not too long ago. So I'm gonna hope that everything is still in pretty good shape inside. It's a fairly simple carburetor, luckily. Thin screwdriver, and let's try to be really careful with this gasket. Okay, it should lift off without damaging. So If you damage it, it's going to leak. Fortunately, this was a pretty new gasket when it was put on. Move that to the side. Take a look at our floats, and our mechanisms are all okay. There's a little bit of, let's see if you can see that. There's actually some cobwebs in there. So, we're going to brush off our garbage into the garbage. And we're going to get some carb cleaner, and we're going to clean out the inside of this carburetor really good. Then we're going to put the top back on and take a look at it. Our floats look okay. Let's make sure we don't have to check we don't have a stuck needle in seat. If everything looks good, we'll press ahead. So let me do that right now. So let's get rid of this stuff. Let's see. You got the little return springs look okay. All right, that one's moving fine. That one's moving fine. Let me get the cobweb off of it. So that way when I put the carb cleaner on it, I don't just blow it into the actual needle and seat and make it worse. All right, good deal. Let's get some spray. This is the other good reason you get to go to Rogers all the time, is you run out of carb cleaner when you need it. Look at that thing. Yuck! Look at that mess. Yeah, there's definitely some gummed up varnish in the bottom of this. I think we might be stripping it apart, because the jets down there are going to need to get cleaned out. So let's do that really quick. Let's go ahead. This is a very simple carburetor. Let's pull out our whole float assembly and needle and seat like that. Set that one right there. That one right there. Okay. You can see this thing is just full of garbage and cobwebs. And so we're going to clean it out really good. We'll reassemble it, we'll slap it back on the car, and hopefully we'll have good fuel. All right, I think everything else we can put back on the car. All right, got the carburetor back on. We'll have to get our accelerator pump linkage put back as soon as we get the carburetor bolted down. That's the one where the stud came out. I don't know if you can see, we put the fuel line back in. I didn't have a fitting, which would have been nice, but ended up, I didn't cut this luckily. It looks like there was a rubber line right in the front here. So I just disconnected that, put it back in and attach it. So we'll run a rubber line off of here to our temporary fuel source when we go to start this. Meantime, let's get all of these started, get it bolted back down. And then we'll have to make sure all of our linkages are on good. And I did check inside the intake manifold, which is one of the reasons I pulled the carburetor rather than just popping the cover off while it was on the car. And I was happy to see, although there was plenty of seeds and mouse remnants inside the carburetor, there was nothing in the intake manifold. So that means there's nothing in the motor that shouldn't be in there. All right, so I'm going to get this tightened down. We'll reattach all of our hoses and fittings, including our vacuum advance. And then we're going to work on getting the battery put in and check the cooling system, and then hopefully be able to give this a crank. All right, so we've got fresh oil, we've got some coolant, we've got our carburetor put back on. There's no fuel in it, it's completely dry, so that's fine. most of our tools out of the way. I put a battery in. The battery is got the terminals backwards, so I had to flip the battery around. Luckily the cable's reached, but assuming black is negative on this car, then it's good. So, this awesome tool cart that has everything that I need. Should have the keys somewhere. Here they are. Alright, so what we're going to do, the wheels are chalked, it should be out of gear, but I'm still not going to stand in front of it. There's no fuel in it, so it shouldn't fire anyway. We want to see if the motor will spin. Yep. Alright, that's it. So it spins free, it sounds good. Starter sounds alright. Alright, hold tight. Alright, we're going to try it on the spray. Hang on. Spray some carb cleaner. Alright, give it a try. Alright, try your gas. Pump the throttle. And hold the throttle down. Push it all the way down. And try the key. Alright, cut. It's entirely possible we don't have any spark. Alright. I actually forgot I had starting fluid. Alright, give it another try. I just got hit by a bunch of acorns. They flew right off the fan and pelted me like a shotgun. That was awesome. I'm glad I wear glasses. Alright, so kind of like what I did with the Spitfire, I'm going to start off just priming it and seeing if it leaks. Which it might, because I don't know, did I tighten that? Yep, I did. All right, shut that off. We should be full. So I just filled up the carburetor float bowls with the pump. The pump's not running, so it shouldn't run too long. Yeah, I'll leave it on. Let's try it again. All right, I shut it down just so we can look for leaks. I don't see any leaks actually. The throttle return spring worked. Sounded pretty good. Still not sure how much coolant's in it. I'm also not sure if it has brakes. All right, fuel pump is on. All right.
So other than cleaning out that carburetor that had become a mouse motel, getting the old 390 running on this Park Lane Marauder wasn't that big of a challenge. Of course, we got lucky. The ignition system, it was still in good order, and it didn't really have too many other problems. And it certainly helped knowing that this car had run in the somewhat recent past. But of course, the ideas of driving it around, hence that crazy bumper-mounted fuel system we were rigging up, simply weren't to be. I put the car in gear while we were using a wheel chock and, well, basically found out it didn't have any brakes at all. The day was running out and there just simply wasn't enough time to mess with those systems. It'll have to be another day. But we can happily say this car runs and goes into gear, and that gives us the motivation to start on some of that rust repair we're putting off. Of course, I gotta say, the more we play with this car, the more it becomes painfully apparent. Riding muscle car or not, there's no quick fix here. This car needs a lot. Luckily, we have our cameras, we have YouTube, and of course we have you, our viewers. So we'll happily keep you updated on this project car, and you know what? Let's see if we can save it here on Vortex Garage.